we just ask that you can just bless this time. Father, we just ask that you can just let this be just a rich time that we can just learn about who you are through the practice of apologetics. And just bless Martin as he just presents this to us. And just give us fellowship tonight, just in these things, the big questions that we can have as human beings about who you are and why you act the way that you do. And just bless this time in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. So welcome, Martin.
Thank you. And sorry. All right, so, thanks for having me. I'm Martin. I'm going to present a little bit about myself first. So this is my family. My wife, my mom, you'll have to guess who's who. And then my two daughters, and they here this year to go on. They go on GGCA, and that's our boy Mike, or man, he is now. He was here 3 years ago. He went to Bible college here, so maybe some of you know him. And I'm an active person. I like to activate myself. Love skiing, for instance. I love dancing. I met my wife dancing. So there's my wife dancing flamenco in Spanish live television. I do CrossFit together with my daughter. I play tennis. And I don't know if you recognize that older man there, but he's a famous Swedish tennis player called Björn Borg that I met a couple of years back in the tennis center. And except for that, I'm working at a Swedish software company, and I'm studying apologetics. So I have for the last 5-6 years studied apologetics part-time at Lutherized College and Seminary, and that's in Atlanta, Georgia. And God willingly, I will graduate this May and have my master degree in apologetics. So that's a little bit about me. And I mean, you could say like, why am I interested in apologetics? Well, I came to Christ quite late in life. I was 27. And before that, I was a skeptic or atheist, somewhere there, anywhere. And when I met the church and started to study, go to church and study the Bible, for me, it was really important. It was all or nothing, you can say. I couldn't, I was brought up with a belief in secularism, in evolution. But for me, it was important that, should I take the Bible seriously, it was important that the first 11 chapters of the Bible was true, the whole creational story. So I couldn't just discard that and believe in everything else. For me, it was important that that was true. So when I started, investigating this, it was a lot from the scientific point of view. I'm an engineer also, so I've always been interested in engineering and science, nature, etc. So that was a big part of me. And after a while, I came to the conclusion that it's more probable that someone created this universe, someone created life, than nothing. That we are here just by a product from materia, time, and chance. I mean, that didn't make sense to me anymore. So that's how my journey started. And as you can hear, I'm not from the US, I'm from Europe, I'm from Sweden, Stockholm, Sweden. And Sweden is one of the Nordic countries up in the north of Europe. And you can see there's other countries, I mean, of course, Russia, Ukraine. It's not far from Europe, actually. So, yeah, people are kind of worried back there at home right now. And just for the note, sometimes people tend to mix up Sweden with Switzerland. But Switzerland is a country between France and Italy. You see it with a SW there, so not the same. So what's the agenda for tonight then? Well, I'm going to initially speak of what is apologetics. I don't know if everyone here actually knows what apologetic is, so I'm going to start with that. And then I'm going to talk about how science points to God. Okay, you might think that, and that was I thought before I was a believer, like we don't need God anymore because science has, kicked God out the door. Science can explain everything. But I'm actually going to talk to you about how actually science points to God. And also the existence and the problem of evil, how that is pointed to God. That's another question. Like people are saying, like, there cannot be God because there's such much evil in this world. But that's a nice thing with this question, I think, that is actually pointing towards God and not against him. I don't think I'm going to have time to speak about the top 10 questions to discuss with skeptical friends and family before the Q&A, because we're going to have a Q&A. Maybe we can speak about it during the Q&A, if you find that interesting. And I think I'm going to talk about around 45-minute-ish, and then we're going to have a Q&A, just so you be prepared. So what is apologetics? Well, apologetic, it is the defense of the Christian faith, or the rational defense, I usually also put in there. And it comes from a verse in the Bible, it's 1 Peter 3:15, that says that always be prepared to give an answer or defense, sometimes it's translated with defense, to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect. And this word, defense or answer in Greek is apologia. So there's the question is why is it called apologetics? It comes from the Greek word apologia, and it means an answer or defense. And often it maybe is, you can think, often it's a little bit misinterpreted, like an apology. You have to make an apology for your faith, but it's quite the opposite. It's actually you have good reasons to defend Christianity. And in apologetics, we use a lot of means to do apologetics. We use logic, reasons, philosophy, history, archaeology, science, moral reasoning, etc., etc. So maybe, everything is grounded in the text, in the scripture. But maybe that's not the first thing you pull up, because many people that you talk to who are skeptic, they do not believe in the Bible. So it doesn't matter that you pull up tons of Bible verses here. It's like, but what you want to do is like have a defense for the Christian worldview that it actually makes the most sense for the reality that we see around us. Okay? And you have positive or offensive and apologetics and defensive apologetics. So apologetics, defensive apologetics is to defend the Christian faith, like answering questions about it. But you can also do, and you should do, like positive apologetics, and that is actually ask other people who has other worldviews to defend their worldview, because sometimes they only say things like, no, I don't believe in God because of this and that. Okay, but why? And why? What evidence do you have for your worldview? It's often put on us, on our backs, to defend our worldview, but what about your worldview? And the objectives with apologetics is, to the skeptics, to remove emotional and logical hindrance for skeptics to be able for him or her to approach the Christian faith, and then finally, hopefully, be saved. That's why we're here. But also for Christians, when I started to study apologetics, it was much for myself. I wanted to have better answers on my own questions and with people that I was discussing with. So, and this is what we tell, because we do apologetics for the seniors at GDCA, and we want to have them good grounds to know why they are a Christian. Not only that they are a Christian, because maybe they have been told to be a Christian their whole life. They're brought up in a Christian family. They go to church. They only have Christian friends, etc., etc. Then they go to university, and then some atheistic teacher says like, how can you believe in that? And he has 10 arguments why you shouldn't be a Christian, and then they lose their faith. And we see that I've seen the statistics in the US that students that go off to university, I think it's more than 50% who lose their faith because they don't know the reasons why they are a Christian, only that they are a Christian. And we want to, give them good grounds for actually why they are Christian. So, to my first point, science is pointing to God. And I'm going to talk about the beginning here, the beginning of the universe. First, just some points about science and its limits, because it's important to understand that the scientific method, it is not designed to answer all questions in life, okay? So science is a discipline that, through different methods and experiments, try to answer specific types of questions, in particular, how things work. But it cannot answer why things work they do, or the reason for it, or the purpose for it, okay? So it's very important to understand that. And for instance, if I go up in the kitchen and I put the water kettle on, and my kid comes in to the kitchen and says like, "Hey, Dad, why does the water boil?" And then the scientific answer is that power comes in to the water, and through energy, the atoms starting to vibrate and move really quickly, and the more quickly they vibrate and move, it's going to heat hotter and hotter, and finally it's going to boil, right? But the philosophical answer is that, well, because Mom fancied a cup of tea. So science can answer the first question, but not the second one, right? But often today, science is trying to answer all these questions, and that is not science, that is a philosophy called scientism. So often you can see things like this this is pulled up from Facebook. So you often see these things on Facebook like, the good thing about science is that it's true whether or not you believe it. And a good question for that is, okay, please prove that scientifically. They cannot, because this is a philosophical statement about science. It's not science itself. So let's start with the start of the whole shebang and look at why actually science is pointing to God. Because science today are in consensus that the universe had a beginning. But it hasn't always been that way. It's quite only the last 60 years where the science has said like the universe had a beginning. Before that, most people, at least in the scientific area, thought that the universe has always been here. It's been here for eternity. Okay, but then this guy Einstein came in 1911. He discovered his famous theory of relativity that told him that the universe is expanding. So from that, if universe is expanding, if you go backwards, it has to have a starting point, right? It made sense. But actually, Einstein, he wasn't a believer. Sometimes I heard stories that, at his deathbed, he converted, etc. I don't know if that's true. But anyway, he wasn't a believer, and he got scared because this told him, wow, the universe had a beginner, and that actually pointed to God because, the Bible has always said that, the universe had a beginning, right? So he got very, very upset and scared and freaked out, and actually he started with introducing a fudge factor in his equations, like making it tell something that it wasn't what he had discovered actually. And afterwards, many years after this, he took it away and said that that was his biggest mistake ever to introduce that fudge factor. Because other scientists after him, like the Russian Friedman, Lemaitre from Belgium, Hubble, the famous Hubble from US, they actually said, well, hey, Einstein, it's true. The universe is expanding. And the birth of the universe was discovered. And then in 1965, Big Bang is proven. And also about this time, there was a big, Time magazine had this big issue where it says like, is God dead? Because, science has proved that we don't need God anymore, so to speak. But is this really the case, I wonder? So, but again, Einstein's theory and the Big Bang is pointing to a beginning of the universe. And if you want to know why and about the Big Bang theory and why does it say so, yes, because the second law of thermodynamics says that energy is running down. So if the universe has been here for all eternity, the energy would already have been running down by now. So it must have had a beginning sometime. And it actually said that the universe is gonna it's gonna be in heat death in the end. And universe is expanding, that we already talked about. And actually, we were listening at a radio program the other day that says like, universe is not only expanding, it expands with a higher velocity. Okay, so, and for me that's like, and they say like, and the reason for this is what they don't know, but they call this black energy. And they said the reason for that the universe expanding more rapidly all the time is because of this unknown black energy. But I'm thinking, can it be some other power that actually makes it expanding more rapidly? Because if you have an explosion and force, it's gonna, it's not gonna, be more rapid and more rapid. It's gonna slow down. But if you have someone actually powering it up, that's the only reason it can be, expanding with a higher rate. But I thought that was really, really interesting. And then the radiation afterglow after the Big Bang was discovered by Penzias and Wilson in 1965. They got the Nobel Prize winners in physics in 1978. By the way, anyone who knows where the Nobel Prize is taking place? Sweden, yes. Do you know why? Anyone knows who Nobel was? So it was this Swedish scientist Alfred Nobel who discovered the dynamite in 18 something. Anyway, we're proud of it. So, and then actually some great galaxies was discovered in 1992, and then we have Einstein's theory of relativity. So all this points to what the scientists call the Big Bang. And you might think like, sorry. Can you back up, please? We are having a little bit. Yeah, 1, 2, one more. Okay. So, yes. So you might think like, I'm a Christian. I can believe in Big Bang. That's sort of science. But you don't have to worry. Big Bang is, as I said, just what scientists call the beginning of the whole thing. The big question is, who is the Big Banger? Okay? And that's what we are going to try to find out here tonight. Who's the Big Banger? And clue number 1, who's the Big Banger? Well, as I already said, the first verse in the Bible also says that the universe had a beginning. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created heavens and the earth. Okay? So we have one clue there. And we're gonna find out more clues here tonight. I'm trying to do several things at the same time here, and I'm very bad at it, so please have patience. There's also philosophical response or proof for the beginning of the universe. And this goes like this. You know, we cannot count up to eternity. It's impossible because it's internal, right? And therefore, we cannot count up from eternity of time. Okay? But that means that we can never have arrived to today if the universe was eternal. Because you count and count, and you never arrived. And I mean, hey, we are here today. It's 26th of March. We sit here. We couldn't be here if the universe was eternal. That's the philosophical response. Okay, I let you think about that for some minutes. But that's the thing we deal with as apologetics. It's kind of fun. But hey, if the universe had a beginning, where did it come from then? Where did it come from? And that's the big question that many people ask. Why is there something rather than nothing? And I mean, we have the law of causality that every effect has a cause. I mean, this computer is here. Why is it here? Yeah, someone built it, someone brought it here, someone put it here. What's more probable? That or that it just popped up from nothing? You know. Everything that is seen here is designed, is created, you know. What is more probable? That someone created this church, or that just like, ba-dang, ooh, here we have a church. But that is actually the answer that atheists have to the question, why is there something rather than nothing? Or they might say, hey, we don't know. But again, what is more probable? That this computer was built and brought here, or that we don't know? What is more probable? What does make more sense? And there's an argument for this in apologetics that is called the cosmological argument, and this is a version of it called the Kalam cosmological argument, and goes like this, that everything that began to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. We already, said that and proved that. And therefore, the universe has a cause. All right. And if the universe has a cause, an uncaused causer or creator of the universe exists, and therefore an uncaused causer or creator of the universe does exist. So that's how their argumentation and the logic goes. And here we have clue number 2 for tonight, why science is pointing to God. Who is the Big Banger again, or the uncaused causer? Well, this is something that needs to be immaterial, spaceless, timeless, because before the Big Bang, or before everything started, there was no materia, there was no space, there were no time, so there has to be something outside of materia, outside of time, outside of space, that actually created materia, time, and space, okay? It has to be, due to that is timeless, it has to be beginningless, also changeless, and it has to be personal. And why does it have to be personal? Why does the cause has to be personal? Because only persons can initiate a change in something, or only persons can start off something, you can say. Okay. And it has to be enormously powerful. I mean, to create universe, you have to be quite powerful, I think. So, I don't know about you if you're, have read about some person who has those features. I know of one guy, but, I want, it's too early to reveal that now. But what nature then? Cannot nature produce something out of nothing? Well, nature didn't exist before the Big Bang. There was no space, there wasn't time, there wasn't matter before Big Bang, and that's what we call nature. So that there was no natural laws, there were nothing. And nothing, Aristotle said that nothing is what rocks dream about. So, nothing. But actually, as I already said, some of the most famous scientists claim that it actually came from nothing. I mean, here we have Stephen Hawking, probably the most intelligent, most, the best scientist we have had on this earth. He says, like, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. Spontaneous creation is the reason there is something rather than nothing. Why the universe exists and why we exist. So this guy is believing in the virgin birth of universe, but he cannot believe in the virgin birth of Jesus. Okay. What is most miraculous? I don't know, but both are quite miraculous, I would say. So he actually believes in miracles. I would say he believes in miracles because he believes that the universe came from nothing. I don't think he would admit it himself. Would he be here? He passed away, as you might know, for a couple of years ago. So then we have Earth. So now we have talked about universe had a beginning, and that there is a cause for the universe. But also Earth is actually, scientists have also discovered quite lately that Earth is perfectly designed for life. Earth is perfectly designed for life. Stephen Hawking again says, like, the remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers seems to have been very finely adjusted to make possible the development of life. Okay, so it's perfectly fine-tuned for life, our Earth and this universe. And so, for instance, if the initial force of the initial expansion of the universe had been different to 1 to the 10th to the power of the 60, no life would be possible on this Earth. Okay, if the force had been slightly weaker, the gravity would have made it collapse back onto itself immediately. And if the force had been slightly stronger, particles would have dispersed into thin air. So this is the small chance that we are here just by one factor, just by the initial force of the expansion of the universe. So this number is quite small. See here. So it's a 0 point and then followed by 59 zeros and a 9. Okay. So that is the small chance that we will be here unless just one of the, what needed to be there for the start of the universe to actually create a world that would be sustainable for life. Okay. So how do we make sense of this number? I mean, you had this 1 to the 10th to the power of the 60. How do you make sense of 1 to the 10th of the 10th to the power of 40? Well, this number is to imagine this, that you would cover the continent of North America with dimes up to the moon. That's 240,000 miles. And you do this with 1 billion North American continents. And there's one red dime. If you blindfoldedly find that dime, that's the chance of finding that dime that is red. That's the chance of 1 in that number. Okay, so that's how small the chance is that, only one of these constants for having a world that could sustain life, would be here from chance. Then this guy, Roger Penrose, one of the world's leading mathematical physicists, he has estimated that the overall difference when taking into account all the different features that needed to be finely tuned and still accommodate the possibility to life is that number. I cannot even say it in English. But it's incredibly small. It's so small, actually, that would you convert all materia in the universe to paper, we wouldn't have enough paper to print out the number of zeros that's needed for actually write that number. Actually, that number has more zeros in it than particles in the universe. So that's how small, if we would be here by chance and no intelligence behind it, that's how small the chance is. But still, that is what science, playing with. I mean, let's take our DNA. If I go to the beach and I said, I go down to the beach and it says like, oh, I love you, Martin. What would I think? Would I think that the waves and the wind got it there, by chance? Or would I think that it was my wife? Well, I would hope it was my wife anyway. I mean, what's that? I love you, Martin. That's 14 letters. In the human genome, there's 6.4 billion letters in the right order. Okay, that's what I call design. That's what I call a good message, right? And that is what science is saying, well, it's only by chance. I think there's something else rather than chance. I think there's a design behind all this. Actually, and we're not going to go into, evolution and, beginning of life, etc. tonight, but just that this guy, Sir Fred Hoyle, astronomer, he said, like, what's the chance of life coming from non-life without intelligence? Well, he says it's like to produce a simple cell out of chance without God in the picture would be the same chance as a tornado blowing through a junkyard would produce a perfect Boeing 747 aircraft. Okay. So actually, there's another of these arguments often used by apologetics. It's called the teleological argument or the design argument. And it goes like this. Everything designed must have a designer. And the universe, the worldly life shows signs of design, right? Just look around you. Then it follows that the universe must have a designer and it must be outside itself. It cannot create itself. This computer cannot create itself. Okay. I think we all agree on that. And the more intelligent design we see, the more intelligent designer. So, for instance, this table, even though it's very nice and so, I mean, I could probably create it, maybe, but I cannot design this. So I would think like, the Apple guy is more intelligent than me, and more intelligent than the guy that designed this table. So, and what about life then? So, who's the big banger? That's the question. Clue number 3. We have all these first 7 clues or features, and we can add an 8th one, and that this guy needs to be immensely intelligent designer. All right? So we're starting to, close down to the, to the suspect here. I'm going to leave science a little bit now and design and creation and origin, and I'm going to go over to another big question of life, the problem of evil. But I think, yeah, if science drove me more to research, when I met Christ, and to research the reliability of can this book telling me the truth or not. I think the problem of evil is another, thing that I think we all, think of this time to time. I think it's a really interesting problem or thing to discuss. So, where is God in this evil world? Actually, I talked to my mom the other day, and she has been away with her friends, and of course they were speaking about the war now in Ukraine, and somebody said like, yeah, where's God in all this? And Mama was like, and she's not even a Christian, she's like, don't blame God. It's not God who's doing this, it's humans. I mean, Putin is not God. So I'm happy I taught her something. But so, but of course, I mean, even with Christians, sometimes, of course, when we go through, hard times, this is a question that pops up, and it's not easy one. But the other thing is like, how can we claim objectively that torturing babies for fun is wrong? I mean, we know that it's wrong, but how can we objectively claim that it is wrong? And I claim that without God, you cannot claim it to be wrong. You can think it's wrong, but you cannot claim that it's objectively wrong, okay? So Richard Dawkins, if you've heard of him, is probably the most famous atheist in the last decade or so. He was writing this about God. The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Jealous and proud of it, a petty, unjust, unforgiving, control freak, blah, 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 genocidal, filicidal, pesticidal. I cannot even pronounce all those things, but he's bad according to Dawkins. He's bad. But, you know, there are smarter guys in my point of view who has, you know, thought about this problem of evil for a long time. C.S. Lewis is one of the, you know, greatest apologist writers that we have for the ever, I would think. And after he went to World War I, and he was an atheist then, but he started to think about these things, and all the things that he saw in war, et cetera, made him think of this problem of evil even more. And he said, like, my argument against God was that the universe seems so cruel and unjust. But how had I got this idea of just and unjust? A man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of a straight line. What was I comparing this universe with when I called it unjust? So, smart guy, had thought it through. And this is just a case. I mean, what is evil? What is evil? And somebody might say, well, if God created everything, he must have created evil also, right? But actually, evil is not something in itself. Gotta pull up my computer. It's actually, I mean, evil is a lack or a deviation in a good thing. It's nothing in itself. It's nothing without the notion of good. So evil is like darkness. Darkness is nothing in itself. It's just the lack of light, right? It's like cancer in the body. It's like rust in a car. If you take the rust out of a car, you have a better car. If you take the car out of the rust, what do you have? Maybe our old car that we have back at home was just rust. No, but I mean, you don't have anything. In the same manner, evil is the lack of good. Evil cannot exist if not good exists. Good cannot exist if not God exists, I claim here. Because again, what do you compare to? You have to have an absolute standard compared to if you call something evil, right? And as my mom said, actually, we know from the Bible that it's not God who's responsible for the evil in this world, but man is. I mean, Adam was the one who rebelled first and sinned against God. And if we think about it, that's actually also, again, we came to the same conclusion as the atheists do, because if you take God out of the picture, who's responsible for all evil then? Yeah, man, again. So we are in agreement here, again. And actually, this is another good moral argumentation, if you would like. Like, if someone says, like, yeah, someone rejects God because all of this evil in this world. So, but when this person says there's too much evil in this world, they also assume that it's good, something good. And when he's assuming there's good, he's also assuming there's such a thing as a moral law on the basis on which to differentiate between good and evil. But if you assume a moral law, you must posit a moral lawgiver. But that is who you're actually trying to disprove and not prove. Because if there's no moral lawgiver, there's no moral law. If there's no moral law, there's no good. If there's no good, there's no evil. So what's your question? The whole question collapses in itself. So actually, in every discussion about good and evil and bad and suffering, you must borrow from the Christian and Judean worldview to make sense of good and bad. in a world without God, this discussion doesn't make sense. Actually, Dawkins and his friends must sit in God's lap to be able to slap him in the face. Okay. You said it first, to me, right? And actually, Dawkins has said also this. This is what he is believing. Like in a universe of electrons and selfish genes, blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt, other people are going to get lucky, and you won't find any rhyme or reason for it, nor any justice. The universe that we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is. At bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. And DNA neither cares nor knows. DNA just is, and we dance to its music. So that's the worldview he's believing in. But wait a minute, didn't he also say that God was unjust in the other quote that I just mentioned? So he cannot have it both ways. He cannot say that God is unjust and say that there is no rhyme or reason, no good nor evil. Actually, most of his argument doesn't make sense. He's a very good debater, and he sounds smart because he's British, but he's not that good a philosopher, to be honest. So the atheist response is that all this results in relativism. Nothing is wrong in itself. There's no difference between that guy and that woman. But also, everyone expects evil to be punished in this life. But the question is then, according to what standard? Again, I got an email from my CEO of my company when the war broke out here a couple of weeks back, and he was, of course, devastated. And on the one hand, he was, what he's saying, he was, he was saying negative things about what was happening and the guy that started it. But on the other hand, he also, we do in these days, or what people tend to do in these days, that it's so good, to include everyone. It's so good that we are a company where we have different minds, we have different opinions, of different. You should include everyone. But I was thinking about this email, but you just excluded Putin in your circle of trust. And would I continue to asking, okay, are there other people you don't want to be in your circle of trust? Well, he would probably say, Hitler and, other guys, shouldn't be in there. And, thinking about it, of all 7 billion people or whatever we are now, it may be soon on this world, you would probably get different circles who to include in this who's okay, who's not okay circle, right? So according to what standard should, we punish people in this and evil in this life? That's the big question. But again, without a universal moral standard, everything just comes down to personal opinion and preferences. So you have 7 billion opinions and preferences of who is good, who is bad. It follows then that this universal moral standard must come outside of human reasoning. So we come to clue number 4. Who is the moral giver? And we have the moral argument for God. It goes like, if God does not exist, objective moral values do not exist. Okay. Objective moral values do exist, therefore God exists. So we can add another feature on my little feature board here, that the big banger must also be the moral lawgiver. So I think I tried to prove here tonight that science and morality is pointing to God. If you read the Bible, that's all of these 9 features is God. He's having those features. And that, I mean, you can do this in many things about reality. You can reason from effect to cause. So what we have done here tonight is to reason from the Big Bang had a beginning, and that points to a beginner. We also reason that fine-tuned designed universe point to designer. We reason that an objective moral law points to a moral giver. And you can do that with everything else as well. Like order points to mind, that we have order in this world. I mean, you might ask, the question, for instance, like, why will the sun go up tomorrow morning? And somebody might say, like, because it has always done that. Yeah, but that is not the answer. That's the question. Why has it always been that way? Why do we have order? Well, something is ordering it for us. And the reason, the way I can stand here and reason with you, and where you can reason with me and with each other, is that we have reasonable minds, and that points to a reasonable, creator. And of course, just of love points to a loving creator as well. If you just see what time it is. Okay, hopefully the last 5 minutes. But you might think like, okay, I'm okay with you. I mean, okay, it sounds reasonable. The problem of evil and that we have morals, that points to God. But why does not God stop it? I think we all have, asked us this question. Well, have you ever noticed that when people say like, cannot stop evil, he actually pointing to stop someone else, not yourself. You're not pointing to yourself, like. So that's a good question. Who should you start with? I mean, actually, when it comes down, we are all sinners. I mean, we actually are all evil. I mean, it hurts to say it, but we are, and we all have the possibility to do evil things. So you can think about that. Who should you start with? If God stops evil in 1 hour, will we be here in 1 hour and 1 minute? Okay. But one reason also, God, we are in this time. God is outside of time. He has the whole picture. He's not only omnipotent, which means that he's all-powerful. He's also omniscient. So he knows everything from start to end. So, I don't know sometimes, we don't know sometimes why things are happening, but he knows, and he is in control. There was this bishop said once, like, if I had all the power of God, I know a lot of things I would change, but if I had all his wisdom, I wouldn't change a thing. Okay? So that's things to talk about. And sometimes, it's only when you go through trials where you actually are seeking God. Sometimes you only look up when you're down on your back. And I think many people come to Christ due to through trials. And I think many of us grow in Christ through trials. And that could be a reason. Actually, our character is strengthened through trials. For instance, what will happen to us if we got everything we asked for? Look at the child, this little baby back there. What do you call a baby that gets everything he asks for? He's spoiled, right? And what is spoiled? His character is spoiled. He's going to be not a good person. And you also have this called ripple effect. So the ripple effect is talking about things, again, that we cannot see, but things are happening that are rippling forward, so other things are happening in the future. And we cannot not maybe understand why things are happening right now, but we will understand it in the future. for instance, you have the story about Joseph in the Bible. You know, what was happening to him? His brother wanted to kill him, but they decided to sell him as a slave instead. And actually, this rippled forward, so, I don't know, many years later, they actually got something good out of their own evil. Actually, Joseph himself said, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." And actually, I heard a story about the man. It was this apologetic guy, Frank Turek, if you know about him. He was doing a forum like this. I love that guy, right? As you maybe heard this story, but I think it's very beautiful. He has a forum like this, and it was talking about the problem of evil. And it was this atheist sitting in the front and, asking, at the Q&A, asking a lot of questions about the problem of evil, etc., etc. And he said, "Yeah, okay, I can understand, but but why do babies die, etc., etc. What's the meaning with all this? What's the meaning? Well, if cannot God just stop it? Blah blah blah." And there was this other man, suddenly raising up his hand, and he told a story, and he said, "I know a woman who was raped, and the rape nearly destroyed her." And it's this time he was his voice starting to crack. And he said and this woman got pregnant due to this rape. But she decided not to punish the baby because of the sins of the father. So she kept the baby. And at this time he was actually crying openly. And this baby grew up to be a boy. And this boy grew up to be a man. And this man became a pastor. And this pastor led many lives to Christ. And many people got saved through this pastor. And he said, "That pastor is me." And I think if my mother can bring good out of evil, then I think God can bring good out of the evil. I think that's a beautiful story. And just to end this, atheists do not have a solution for the problem of evil. But God has, and He provides a solution for the problem even. He took our evil upon Himself and died in our place. And God is promising that everyone who trusts and believes in Him in their hearts will spend eternity with Him in heaven. But it's a choice that we have to make. God is too lovingly to force somebody into heaven against His will. So we have to take the decision. And that was it. And maybe we're gonna have a bathroom break, 5 minutes, if you need it, and then we'll come back and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And if you do not want to put questions here openly, you have my email address there, so I'm happy to answer thoughts, questions on emails as well. So thank you. Does it work?
He answered one of my questions.
Oh, that's good.
Because I was wondering, like, what makes I guess the official Bible version.
People might have better answer than I do when it comes to those kind of things.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because she's the one that taught me. I was telling him I learned what apologetics meant on the way here.
All right.
Because I didn't know. either way is good. Either definition. You don't want to be apologetic over your faith either. So yeah, it is good. But
All right, should we start the Q&A? And already questions are coming in here. So who want to start? And I might ask for help here as well. I'm not omniscient as God, unfortunately. Yeah. You want the mic?
Which came to mind from your presentation too. But Dr. Henry Morris, who was a creationist apologete, in the introduction to one of his books said that dogmatic atheism is self-contradictory foolishness. Because in order to dogmatically state that there is no God, you would have to be everywhere in the universe at all points in time and know all things that are taking place. Therefore, you become the evidence that destroys your own argument.
Yeah. That's a good one. Definitely. Yeah. Want to come up?
Just to piggyback off what this gentleman was saying, I recently was witnessing to somebody, and it was funny because in the conversation, he started telling me what he required of God. So I stopped him, and I was like, what you just did was you took the position of God. And if you guys are ever witnessing to somebody, that's going to happen all the time. I mean, I'm sure you've come across it, even if you didn't catch it in the moment. But more often than not, especially with like atheists and like the new wave, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual types. Like they always sit in God's seat and then try to be like, there can't be a God for this, that, and third. And then they require everything that God has. So just be on the lookout for that. It's not a question, but I just wanted to piggyback off what he was saying.
Yeah. But it's often that way, like you can often ask back the questions to them, that will their whole argument will sort of dissolve or will, because there's no logic behind them, or their reasoning. I mean, it's actually counterproductive. Or what do you say? Yeah. More thoughts, questions. Did you have any more, or did you get everything settled?
I mean, he did answer the one. I guess I'll ask it again. I was asking, what are the how were the books decided? Like the books that were going to be in the Bible, how was that figured out? And what was the reasoning behind the exclusion of certain books? And I guess you go a step further and say, like, what's the proof that that the Bible is even real at all? Just a couple questions.
So, and please fill in here, but I mean, we know that some books didn't meet the requirements due to that actually differ too much from the other books. So this cannot be true. They don't met the standard. And then there were when it comes to the New Testament books, we know that, help me here, but is it like they either had to be a disciple of God, of Jesus, or they had to be walking with a disciple with Jesus to be able to, have, have apostolic authority. Thank you. Yeah. What else? Fill in here, please. Yeah.
Yeah, it started as oral traditions that were eventually written down. I can stand too, so you don't got to look over people. And over time, they started to investigate them. So God bless writers like Luke and John who added late Gospels. Excuse me, because it filled in blanks. And what Luke, and he's a great one to look at. Excuse me, because he wrote like word for word most of the New Testament between Luke and Acts. And his description of how he got his stuff was that like an investigative journalist. He went to different countries and interviewed eyewitnesses. So it was very natural. Like, it's not this, like, a lot of people think it was this, like, secret meeting of these guys with long white beards that were like, hey, what do we, it wasn't that. It was very natural. It was people wanted to know the truth, so they went and asked. During a time where there was no Google, no cell phone, no carrier pigeons, like, they had to literally go to these places, and that's what they did. And you have people like Paul. Paul was challenged. They were like, let's see if he knows what he knows. So, challenged by Peter, and they corrected each other. They were, I mean, they're still human, so there's human mistakes that were made before the scriptures were canon, but before they were what we have today, they challenged each other and they talked to each other. The game of telephone that everyone says the Bible is it's not true. No one, the game of telephone is, I tell him one time, never bring it up again. And then when the last person goes to repeat it to us all, then we laugh about it. It's not what happened. I said it 1,000 times to everyone I met. He said it 1,000 times to everyone he met. She said it 1,000 times to everyone she met. We all wrote it down. The printing press, because of the Bible. The spine of books, because of the Bible. Like, the Bible, very natural. Like, it's the most natural thing to come together. And the existence of the Bible and the existence of the church only makes any sense at all when you take the historical and social climate of the day, that Jesus was real, died on the cross, and rose. Those are the, like, there is no other explanation. There isn't one. Like, I challenge everyone, do a really deep dive and try to figure out around that. Nothing else makes sense.
Good point. And I mean, the New Testament writers didn't invent the events, especially the resurrection in the New Testament. The resurrection actually invented the New Testament writers to write the New Testament. So Christianity, it wasn't started with a book. Christianity started with an event, and that was the resurrection of Jesus. And that was the whole starting point of Christianity. More thoughts? Question? Yeah? Yeah. I don't know if we have another mic. Yeah. Yeah.
The letters that Paul wrote, they're letters, and they were circulated. So you had all the different churches would have seen the same letter. And then Timothy, and then Onesimus, who we look at the book of Philemon, who was a slave who was then, turns out, set free and actually became one of the main church leaders around 100 AD, collected all these letters, collected the writings, and they put them all in one place so they would have them because they were all scattered. And when they did, those were called the church fathers, and they would look at them and they would decide, yes, this was, and they were under the anointing when they did it, whether it met the criteria, which is called the canon, literally a ruler. It had to be not only historically correct, but they had to say that, yes, it was anointed by God. And these were men who, Onesimus obviously was under the guidance of Paul. Timothy was under the guidance of Paul. Paul had met with the apostles in Jerusalem. Luke got his information while Paul was locked up for 2 years in Caesarea before he went to Rome. Luke was in Jerusalem meeting all the apostles. So it was a very close-knit group that did all the writing. And if you were not part of that close-knit group, it was excluded. If you were part of the close-knit group and they felt that it met the canon, it was included in for the New Testament.
Oh, that's cool. And we know also that the Bible and the New Testament are, I mean, when it comes to manuscript, original manuscript, there are so much more manuscript. I mean, I think it's around 25,000, which are a lot. And if you compare them between each other, they're so, I mean, the difference is so small. There's no actual difference in outcome or meaning of the manuscript. There are dots and spaces and maybe some words, but it doesn't change the meaning of the text. And if you compare that to other ancient books like the old Greek writers, what's they called? Yeah, everyone. I mean, I'm sorry? Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's just a few. So the evidence for the Bible are, exceptional, but still people, it's a hard problem for people. It's not an intellectual, question for people, because would they take the Bible as seriously as one of the other books? There would be no question about it, but it's a hard problem. They don't want to believe it.
One very powerful thing that I've learned when the church fathers were establishing the canon scriptures, there was Roman persecution at the time, and they were coming to people's houses, and if you had Christian literature, you were dragged out and crucified or fed to the lions. And so the believers of the day were coming to the church fathers because there were lots of spurious letters, false gospels, Gnosticism was rife, and so on. So the people were coming to the church fathers and saying, I have these books, which one should I die for? And they meant it, and they died. And so that was the level of the decision-making that was going in, the severity of the thought process and the prayer that went into determining the canon of Scripture. We'll die for these books. We won't die for this stuff. Yeah.
And that is, I think, like what another question that you can think about. I'm going to pull this up here. But yeah, I mean, why would they go die if they invented the resurrection? If the Jews invented the resurrection, why would they go and die for a lie that they knew wasn't true? I mean, you might say like, well, people go and die for their faith all the time nowadays as well. Not maybe our faith, but other faiths. But they haven't met Jesus. They haven't met their, what they believe in. They haven't proved for it. They just believe in the lie and then go and die for a lie. But these guys is different. They saw it with their own eyes. And they told everyone about the resurrection. But if they would invent it themselves, they wouldn't go and die for it. They would just back off and say like, okay, sorry, I was lying. Release me, please. So, and I mean, what otherwise, what were their motive? I mean, there's this cold case investigator called J. Warner Wallace, who's now he was an atheist, becoming a Christian, and is now also famous apologist. And he says like when he's and it's kind of cool. He's like investigating Jesus as he do with cold cases in crimes. So and he says like that they're only you can go back to 3 motifs why people commit crimes, and it has to do with either sex, power, or money. All crimes are made due to one of these 3 things. And I mean, for instance, why would the Jews, why would the apostles invent the resurrection or invent what they have seen about Jesus' life? I mean, did they think they're gonna get more women because of inventing Jesus? No, I don't think so. It wasn't about sex. Money? Did they get any money? No. I mean, did he get more power? No. I mean, look at Paul. He had all the power before he converted into Christian, and then he actually suffered from it. So it's just like, and all the, maybe I can also pull this up here, because there's a lot of events. Let's see here. Yeah, so these are some events or some things that change before the resurrection and after the resurrection. So before the resurrection, you had the animal sacrifice system, and after the resurrection, it was unnecessary because Christ was the ultimate sacrifice. You had the law of Moses before. Afterwards, Christ's life fulfilled everything. You had strict monotheism. Afterwards, you believed in the Trinity. The Sabbath, the Jews actually, the Jews who became Christians changed their Sabbath as the holy day and replaced it to Sunday. That's not a little thing for Jews to do. And there are other things. So, yeah. This is kind of cool, I think. So you can look at the event, you can look at the events in history to actually see that something happened there at that point in time. And what makes more sense? Someone explained it with a mass, what do you call it? Mass hypnosis? Yeah, exactly. The 500 people who claimed to see Jesus, it was just a hypnosis. But that's ridiculous. I'm sorry? Yeah, maybe that is. I cannot find a word right now. But these things never happen. 500 people at the same time see the same thing. And would they invent the resurrection? Why would they have women as the first witnesses? Women wasn't considered even credible witnesses at that time. If they would invent, the story, they wouldn't have women as the first witnesses, for instance. So it's a lot of things. Yeah.
I wanted to also say the early Jews also believed anyone that was hung on a tree or a post was cursed. So literally to be crucified meant that Jesus was cursed. All of the first of his followers were Jewish men. This wouldn't have been something lost to them. So to say in the first century that our Messiah is this accursed man makes no sense. The only reason they would have said it, because even if they truly believed it, they wouldn't have said it because they'd have been laughed out of the synagogues. No one would have looked at them and taken them serious unless it was true. That's just not something you would have said. That's almost that's like a Black Lives Matter supporter being like, you know what? Trump has a few good ideas. It's not something you're gonna hear. Like it isn't. Like just to give you kind of like a social, like how society viewed it. Also, this brother was talking about witnessing and people being taken out of their homes. The word witness, when people say they're witnessing the church, we have a word for that today. The word they were using was martyr. To witness in the first century meant to die for your beliefs. That's where we get the word martyr from a Christian action. It means to die for what you truly believe to be, like for what you believe to be true. So keep that in mind. Number one, no Jew would have been like, my Messiah just died on a post. Number two, I believe this so much I'm going to die for it. On a post. And number three, there were other messiahs. There were other men that fit the bill way better. These guys were warriors. They were soldiers. When they died, you know what happened? What are their names? Anybody? But you know Jesus, right? It's weird. The other guys that fit the bill, you don't know their name. But you know Jesus. Because a religion that shouldn't exist and that doesn't make any sense is the one that the majority of the world claims. Think about that. Oh, and I had a question too. Did you guys talk about disputed books?
Yeah.
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 I came in really late. I missed
All right.
it.
No, I didn't.
All right.
Yeah, the apocalypse.
Not the Apocrypha.
Yeah.
I'm gonna destroy this word. The anti-legomena, the books that are canonized that were disputed, like Revelation, and the reason why they were originally disputed and why they were canonized.
No, I have no idea.
Guys, look into that. It's easy to find on YouTube why books were taken out. You're gonna find first the atheist stuff, but when you look at the Christian perspective, it makes so much sense why we kept it. It's like, oh, this is the same. It's saying the same thing. Very tiny little problems that people harp on and blow up, and most of them just don't believe in miracles. That the majority of books that were disputed in the New Testament was because people who dispute them don't believe in miracles. But if God is real, miracles are possible.
If the first verse is true, like in the beginning God created, then at least all the other miracles are possible, right? And there were other things the Jews thought that their Messiah would put out the kingdom there and then, right? And they didn't expect him, and they also didn't expect the resurrection at that time. They expected a resurrection in the future, but not at that time. So there was a lot of things that they thought about Jesus and the Messiah, but didn't happen according to what they thought would happen. And still they went out, because they saw him. If you have a person who correctly prophesy his death and resurrection, and you meet that guy, I would tend to believe him, what he says, right? Do we have any more questions or thoughts? Yeah, Cody.
Can you explain, you had an argument that you were speaking about that was like, it was like what we talked about the other day. Yeah, so like infinity before us and infinity after us.
Yeah, back to the philosophical.
Yeah, the kalam. Yeah. Or maybe I'm wrong.
About eternity, that you cannot count up to eternity and cannot count down, or?
Yeah, like so I think
Yeah.
what you said was, if there was infinity before us, then we can never get to today.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can you explain?
Okay, I can try to. It's really philosophical. It took me some time as well to, But again, so what we proved was that the universe had a beginning, and that's what we want to prove, and we did that through through science and what it says in the Bible, etc. But also like this philosophical answer that actually it cannot have been, universe cannot have been here for all eternity, because then we wouldn't have actually reached today's date. And okay, I'm trying to explain this in another way maybe, but let's say, okay, even this, if this doesn't make sense, but let's say the start of the universe was eternally on the 1st of January this year. And you're gonna count up till 26th of March, here today. And you start with January 1st, and then when you wake up next morning, it's still January 1st. Even if you have passed one more day, as it's eternal, you're always adding something more, because you're never gonna, it's not a limited period of time. So every day it's a new day, but it's still the 1st of January. So we never actually reach today's date, because, didn't help, I guess. but so you can never count up to, if you try to count to eternity, you're never gonna reach an end, right? Yeah. All right. Yeah.
So I'm still Pastor Philippe's his analogy. So Pastor Philippe taught us if you had an infinite amount of dominoes, and somehow you were able to tap the first, which automatically doesn't make any sense, and you were the 12th hundred, but it went infinity that way, and someone taps the first, how long would it take to get to the one that you're at? You would never reach it, because it's infinity in the past. First off, you'd never be able to tap the first one, because that's a contradiction. Because it's infinity, there is no first one. It never ends. So if there was an infinite amount of days in the past, you would never get to today, because it's infinity that way. So from the first one, which contradiction, it would never arrive to today. And we have entropy, which is things break down. In the universe, there's a set amount of energy, and we've proved that. I'm not going to go into that, but we've proved it. Take my word.
Yeah, but that's the second law of thermodynamics.
The second law is the second one. It's the second law of thermodynamics, facts. So because of entropy, things are winding down. Energy's running out. It's like, this was Philippe, again, if you put gas in your car and you drive it, what happens? Eventually, the needle, it hits E, right? The universe is doing the same thing. All the energy is going toward that E. And eventually, it's going to end. So if it's going to end, it must have had a start. Another thing he used was, say this is a bottle of water. Now, if I drink it and it never empties, that's infinite. But if I drink it and it starts to empty, then that had a beginning. That had to have been filled first. There had to be a set amount for it to deplete. And what we see in the universe is depletion. Everything is winding down. Is that good? You guys got that? All right. It's big stuff.
Yeah, and I think the second one is easier to grasp, like energy is running down, so we have a start. But if we wouldn't have a start, that we wouldn't be here, then yeah, it's mind blowing. It's so because it's an impossible number to grasp, I guess. So for us, so. Yeah.
So, as an apologist,
Yeah.
amazing thing in Scripture is that the Pharisees knew the possibility that Jesus would be resurrected, so they asked if there could be guards in the tomb.
Yeah.
And then those guards reported that Christ actually was resurrected.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of believing in the resurrection of Christ and who he claimed to be, they rather tried to cover it up.
Yeah.
So, knowledge doesn't bring to a person to actually believe. So there's knowledge and then there's actually believing. And for you, why do you, if you have all these arguments that are rational, why do you see that people still don't receive Christ into their life?
Yeah. So 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 I think, and I think you were speaking about that day that we were very late to church. You have that guy, at the summer day. He's at the river, going down the river. Everything is nice. He has his drinks, and somebody like calls him like, "Hey, come to the shore because there's a waterfall, 100 feet down or two or whatever, a mile down, and you're gonna die if you reach it." And he's like, let me be, don't disturb me. I want to have a good life here. So I think it's a very good question. One of the 10 top questions to actually ask your skeptic friends is like, if Christianity were true, would you believe it? And if that person says no, you know that person, he's not out on a truth quest. He's out on a happiness quest. He don't want to, he might think that, being Christian means a lot of, obligations, or he has to stop doing this or that, or, it's not any fun, or like, oh, you have to wake up early every Sunday and go to church, and, I thought that. I love to sleep, so I mean. But I mean, so that's a really good question. And I think that's the reason why it's not a mind problem. They can, being a Christian, you have to not believe that. I mean, you can believe that the Bible is true, or that it's possible that Jesus Christ rose from the dead, but you have to believe you have to believe with your heart that is true. And I think that's the question, to go from the head to the heart.
I will often, when I'm facing that kind of unbelief, I will often say to people, you know what I'm saying, and if I truly believe the things I'm saying, how could I not say them to you?
Yeah, exactly.
If this is really what I believe is the nature of God, the nature of the universe, and so on, then I'm bound,
Yeah.
really, by this morality that doesn't exist except for the fact that it's true.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, I've heard many times like, oh, I wish I had faith like you. Like, haven't you heard that? Like, yeah, it seems to, I mean, I wish I could believe like you believe. I mean, and that's the same reasoning, but yes, we're offering this. You can take it into, not. And I think it can be hard. I mean, I had also, like, personally, a little bit hard to realize that I'm a sinner, But I do the best I can, I try to, be nice to people, and, have I done anything wrong? Like, well, okay, maybe I shoplifted a chocolate when I was 12. But then it comes in the relative morality. Like, I'm not that bad at, I mean, I only shoplifted one chocolate. I know a guy who stole a whole car, But that guy said, well, it's only a car. I know a guy who actually, beat his wife. Isn't that worse? Another guy who beat his wife. Well, I know someone who's killed his wife. And, you can go on, and in both directions. And again, you're going to come up with 7 billion of those circles of relative morality standards. And God said, like, we make the circle like infinitesimally small, so nobody comes in, but everyone comes in. I mean, nobody comes in through their works, but everyone comes in through their faith. The only thing we have to do is put faith in God, and then, it's the only also faith that we do not achieve our identity, we receive our identity, And that's very helpful, I think. We don't have to, I mean, but I mean, I don't know how it is here in the U.S., but when you go somewhere and, at family parties or whatever, and you meet new people, what you first ask is like, okay, what do you work with? And people literally are identified with either their works or jobs or maybe something else that are passionate to them. But that's the whole thing. And then, they get fired from the work. And, what happens then? They have nothing. They are nothing. And it's kind of, I think it's very comfortable to realize that we don't have to strive and we are not identified with what we do. We're identified who we are. And that we are children of God. And that's comfortable, I think.
The other good thing with your presentation was that the two things that you did was really Romans chapter 1,
Mm.
which was that you have the evidence of God as one creation, and the second is conscience.
Mm.
So the idea of justice, where justice comes from, is like you did a really good job
Mm-hmm.
explaining that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Good.
it's very good because we live in a day and age now that everybody's crying out for justice.
Exactly.
But like you made a good point in the sense that if God was going to rid the world of evil, where is he going to start?
Yeah.
And we have a pretty good idea, but we're never really at the center of that. But we have a good idea of where he should start.
Yeah.
It's usually our neighbor or the arch enemy. It's never us.
Exactly. Please start with someone else. Yeah, this atheist that was talking about that was at this Frank Turek forum. He was like, first question, like, why doesn't God stop evil? And Frank Turek said, like, well, be cautious what you pray for because, he might start with you. And that's a quite good answer. And actually, let's see here. I was thinking about something. Things to... Yeah, so this is one of the questions, like, as you said, everyone today is asking for justice, and, everyone believes in justice. And this is a good question to ask your skeptical friends and family or whoever you talk to. Like, do you believe in justice? They would probably say yes. And then you believe that injustice should be punished, right? Yes. Have you done anything unjust in your life, like shoplifted a chocolate or lied or... everyone must say yes. And then you could ask, like, would you like a pardon? That's a good way to come into the, salvation message, I think.
I just had a quick question. You mentioned it not being a problem of the head, but a problem of the heart. So when we're out there witnessing, what's a good way to aim for the heart? Like, how do you... Like if you're talking to somebody and intellectually they're kind of dancing around the problem and they're not really letting you in on the heart, how would you recommend, like, penetrating through that?
Yeah, I think a good way always to start is to be interested in the person. Like, you probably have heard about, like, behind every question there's a questionnaire. Like, there's a person, and this person is different every time. And then also the things that make sense to that person and that is important to he or she is, you're going to discover that by asking questions about that person. So I think that's a good way to start the dialogue, to really be, and dependently, of course, if you're out on the street, you maybe have a quick just chat, but if it's a more close friend or family, we have seen this in, for instance, like, this is, for instance, I think I read it's very important when you witnesses to Muslims, for instance. The relationships are very, very important to gain trust in the person first and then starting to speak. So that's one thing. Like, again, who are you? What are your beliefs? And when they are opening up, there are 3 very good questions, I think, from a tactical point of view to ask people. So they might say, yeah, I don't believe in God. And then you can ask, okay, what do you mean by that? Just for that person to open up a little bit more, and also for you or me in this case, if I'm the person standing there, to understand a little bit more what you mean. And then he might say like, well, since we have discovered Big Bang, we know that, we don't need God anymore. We have all the question. Okay, but how did he come to that conclusion? Maybe he didn't thought it through. Maybe he has heard it in school or from someone or from the society. I mean, we're pumped with information today. But actually, if you say like, how did he come to that conclusion? That person has to open up and actually think about it himself a little bit. And even if he has an answer, you can then like say like, have you ever thought of that, the Big Bang actually points to origin of the universe, that actually points to a cause of the universe that has to be outside the universe, and you can start the whole conversation like that. So I think that are 3 good questions that we can remember tactically, like what do you mean by that? And then how did you come to that conclusion? And then have you ever thought of, and you come with your argumentation from a Christian point of view. That is coming from a book called Tactics from Gregory Kugel. I can recommend that. It's a really good, good tactics. I don't know. Should we, any more questions, or do you want to go home and watch some bad movie or something? I mean, I'm here. I can stay. Yeah, exactly. So if you say now you want to go home, I know that you prefer a bad movie. No, but I mean, time is up. So I mean, feel free to leave. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said earlier, people often try to put themselves in the seat in God's seat. So what I normally do is I start with like video games, because most people know what a video game is. Remember in the fall, he also like spoke of thorns and thistles, because there's typically 2 arguments for the problem of evil. It's like our evil and natural disasters. So the thorns and thistles covers natural disasters, and the rest of the punishments dealt out cover our relationship with animals and each other. And in just that very short, punishment in Genesis 3, you get every answer to the problem of evil. And with that short analogy of the God box, you take God out of that position. And what this also does is it forces the person you're talking to in the box, because they don't want to be in the box. They want to be outside the box so they can judge what happens in it. Actually, they want to be in outside of another box, and they want God to be in that box, and you to be in the box that God made. That's really what they want.
Yeah.
Because they want to be able to judge everybody. Because I'm perfect. Like you didn't know. Like the perfect God thing. I've heard people say if he's perfect. Feeling.
Yeah.
So what would you say to that?
Who was he addressing when he said that? Who did he want to have understand what his
And he says Israel is going off with another God. And as a faithful husband, I love my wife, and I'm jealous in the sense that she's going that direction. Yeah, it's not like a fickle jealousy. It's more of like based upon his loving kindness for them.
Yeah, that's also what I've learned. That it's more of a positive kind of jealousy. Like, you know, if my wife would go out and, you know, do things with other, no, then I would be jealous, right? And you know,
I was gonna say a lot of people think of jealousy like coveting. You know, like you don't covet your neighbor's things or your neighbor's wife or anything like that. God isn't coveted when He's jealous. It's His. Somebody's taking something of His, and it's worse than that because they didn't take anything. Something of His left, and like it's important to remember that we're all image of God bearers. And if you ever saw your image do something that you didn't do or that it's not supposed to do, it would bother you greatly. If you look in the mirror and your reflection is laughing when you're sad, that's going to freak you out. Like you're gonna be like, who slipped me something? Like it's because it's not right. It's deeply disturbing, and we're supposed to be imaging Him, and instead we're laughing when He's crying.
and he does it from love. I mean, I love my wife. I don't want her to do stuff. It's out of love. Do you do stuff? Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, that's what Richard Dawkins says, one of the attributes. Jealous God. And he, of course, say it in a negative way, but, you know.
I think all emotions in the right, like at the right times, can be positive. Anger at the right time is positive. I think like even one of the hardest things that like especially men have to deal with is lust. But in the right circumstance, like between you and your wife, that's perfect. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you take any emotion and put it in the wrong place, like you look at the like homosexual relationships, they love each other a lot of the times, and it's a weird perversion of love. But if you hear them tell it, they love each other, and even love, one of the greatest emotions you can have for anyone, they take it and they put it in the wrong area. So yeah, jealousy is absolutely disgusting if it's not warranted.
Hmm.
But if it's looked at as a passionate, consuming love for the perfect relationship you have with your beloved,
Yeah.
then it would lead you to die on the cross.
Like that one you use the child going with somebody else.
Mm.
Like
Mm.
if you have kids, man, that's terrifying.
Mm.
Partners, kids are going with somebody else like that. That's terrifying. That's the thought. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, thank you. It was. Yeah. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Cool. You're dismissed. Go home and watch that, silly movie.